to my studio. I have a project share today of a set of companion journals. These journals have been in the works for a little over a year, and no, it doesn't take me a year long to make journals. It's just that at the time when I started these, I had some health issues and we had some family things come up, so this just got stuck on a shelf. And recently I pulled them back out and I really wanted to finish this. This was a story I really wanted to tell in these companion journals. And what prompted this was Leanne Monica of Bird's Nest Books, it's like been a little over a year ago, I think, had a challenge on her YouTube channel to do a movie themed junk journal. And I immediately knew what movie I wanted to do and kind of how I wanted to theme this. So I have been working off and on, like I said, on this for over a year, and I finally just in the last like maybe 2 weeks were able to get these journals done. The movie I chose is rather obscure and probably maybe not many people have heard of this. And maybe a lot of people don't know this character, but this is based on a true story of a real person that lived, and her name was Opal Stanley Whiteley. And the movie is called Opal, a Woman, Her Diary, 100 Years of Controversy. This is a beautiful movie. The only thing that I had an issue with on this is, having done my research on Opal, there were, and it's always this way when something's made into a movie, there were liberties taken. One of the things is they portrayed the mother in this story as very kind and loving, and she was really not. And they also portrayed it that Opal just had a younger brother, and that the brother was the one who ended up destroying Opal's diaries, which it was not. It was actually a foster sister that did it. So there were, you know, little discrepancies in here, but most of the things that pertain to just Opal herself were true to the story. This is both an inspiring and a sad tale of Opal's life. And I first met Opal over 20 plus years ago. I was in the library and I was browsing the book titles, and I saw this title that said The Singing Creek Where the Willows Grow. And it was called The Rediscovered Diary of Opal Whiteley. And it was by Benjamin Hoff, and he's done extensive research, and he actually met Opal. And I have a newer copy of that book, and I'm going to link all these resources below so that you can see them. And this is Opal, and when I read this book, I fell in love with this young lady. I just related to her so much. And she was a child prodigy. She was very brilliant. She was a naturalist. She was a diarist. She was a nature writer. She was very into the Christian endeavor, and she had a real desire to teach children about God through nature. And this is Opal's story. And the reason there are 2 books here is because in this movie there are parallel stories going on. There's the story of Opal's herself and her diary, but there's also the story of the book that Opal is actually trying to get published. So I'll just show you a couple of my other resources that I have. I have this really old first edition copy, The Story of Opal, the Journal of an Understanding Heart. This was published as a serial in a newspaper in 1920. And so this is my copy of that book. Then I have a reproduction copy of the book that Opal was trying to publish, which is called The Fairyland Around Us. And we'll learn more about these different things as I go through this flip through. Then there's also this book, by Jane Boulton, who has done also extensive research on Opal. She adapted Opal's words and put it almost in poetic form here. It's still all of Opal's words, but she makes it read like a poem. And so I have a copy of that. I also have an older copy. This is the older, it's the same book, but this one is really old, and it was really cheap. And this is the one that I kind of used cutting up to use in the, you know, in the journals themselves. I also wanted to introduce my grandchildren to Opal. So I have an Opal storybook called Only Opal, The Diary of a Young Girl. And I also came across a folk musician named Annie Hills that actually took some of Opal's words and set them to music. And so this is a CD I have become quite an Opal fan. And anyway, we're going to start with just one book. I'm going to put them aside, and we're going to start with the Story of Opal, because that's where this story actually really does begin. Here is the spine. Whoops, did I have that upside down? I have that upside down, don't I? Sorry. Because I put it on opposite of how you would. There it is, the Story of Opal. And here is the front of the book. It has a little niche in the front that is covered with acetate. Has some of the words of Opal's diary in there, and some dried botanicals. And this says, excuse me, morning is glad on the hills. The sky sings in blue tones. Little blue flowers are early blooming now. I do so like blue. It is glad everywhere. When I grow up, I'm going to write a book about the glad of blues. The earth sings in green. And so I wanted to portray this as part of Opal's diary, that here are some little handmade books and a little pen nib and things like that. The book is 9 by 6, and it's about two and a half. I think it's 2.5 inches wide. Let me go out. No, out. There we go. Out a little bit so you can see that. And this is just covered with some paper, some old vintage lace, and some embossed felt. Originally, I was not going to do the spines. I had painted the spines. I was really happy with them. And I don't even know what happened, but the spines cracked. So I was like, great. It's embellished with some little beads and acorns and pine cones and just little natural things. I did use 2 things that were printables. Anywhere you see these little specimen labels, these little scientific labels, these are a Tracy Fox printable, because I didn't have anything like that in my, stash, anything that was usable for that. So I bought those, and I will link that down below. I also used a free printable from Nick the Booksmith. I don't know if she still has this available. I will check, because it's something that I printed out a really long time ago, and it's these little miniature envelopes, and the colors were really pretty in here, and I never used them. I printed them out, cut them out, and never used them, so I thought I would use them for this book. Okay, enough rambling. Let's get on with it. We've got just a wired ribbon tie. Simple, simple, simple. And I forget, I don't even know how many pages. I know this has 3 signatures, and I'm not sure how many pages. Anyway, let's get on into the book. So, Opal had pets, and her pets were pretty unusual. This little guy here, I'm trying to get that, excuse me for going in and out. This little guy here is Thomas Chatterton Jupiter Zeus. He was a wood rat that lived in the woodpile. And so that was one of her unusual pets that she carried in her bonnet a lot. This is a picture of Opal as she is reassembling her diary. And I want to read to you a little bit from this. This is the introduction from the book that Jane Boulton wrote, and this was from May of 1975. This is an unusual diary of the most unusual child who was born just before 1900. Her precocity was to set her apart all her life long, and the vividness of her inner life was to bring her both acclaim and misunderstanding. Before she was 5, she lost her parents and was given to the wife of an Oregon lumberman. Opal Whiteley was the name they gave her, and she lived in 19 lumber camps before she was 12. To put a little note in here, there is some discrepancy on Opal's parentage, okay? Opal claims that these were not her parents, that until she was about 5, that she actually had royal parentage that were French, and that she was given to this couple, and they named her after a daughter of theirs named Opal that had died. And so, and also, if I did my research right, they do give a birth date for Opal, but there was never a birth certificate produced that confirmed that the Whiteleys were her parents, but Opal always maintained that they were not. So that's a little bit of the mystery and controversy in there. At that time, a foster sister was in a childish temper, unearthed the diary from its hiding place, and tore it into a myriad of fragments. Opal stored the pitiful scraps in a secret box. Desperately poor at the age of 20, Opal brought a nature book that she had written to the editor of the Atlantic Monthly Press, Ellery Sedgwick, in hopes of selling it. A fairyland of beasts and blossoms and butterflies and birds. It was quaintly embellished with colored pictures pasted in by hand. There was little about the book to tempt a businessman, but the girl herself, something very young and eager and fluttering like a bird in a thicket, had a very special appeal. And after hearing bits of her life story, intrigued by her occasional French words, Sedgwick was moved to ask if she had ever kept a diary. And with that, Opal burst into tears. Then painfully, over 9 months, she pieced together the pages written when she was 5 and 6 years old. They were published as The Story of Opal by the Atlantic Monthly Press in 1920. This version, scenes have been rearranged and characters introduced differently, except for a few words that are charmingly misspelled. Most of the spelling has been corrected, since the lines seem like poetry. This is the form I gave them, but the words are Opal's. And this was the foreword in Opal, by Opal Whiteley, the Jane Boulton book. And this is a picture of Opal as she lived and worked with Mr. Sedgwick to piece together her diary. So let's take a flip through the book here. We have some handmade paper with some I can't even speak, embedded botanicals. Here we've got a little stencil pocket. Now, in Opal's book, she was truly an original junk journal, and I'll tell you the story of this a little later on when we get to the Fairyland book around us. But Opal ended up having to cut and paste pictures out of magazines and books in order to get her book complete. This is Opal's writing. It says Downy Woodpecker and Harry Woodpecker. And this is just turned into a little simple journal card. This is the book that Opal was having published, The Fairyland Around Us. I have just glued it in and added some simple brown paper because a lot of Opal's writing was done on envelopes and brown paper that one of their neighbors, Sadie McKibben, she would bring her things to write on. And so that was where she got her paper. And there was a man that worked in the lumber camp, and it was the man with gray neckties, is what Opal called him, and he would leave her crayons and pencils, and that was how she was able to print. We've just got Tim Holtz dye here. Here is just some fabric. This fabric was inspired by the clothing that were worn in the movie. Opal wore a lot of dresses. There were a lot of green. There was a lot of green in the movie. And she wore a lot of white lawn and the white lace dresses that were in that period. And so this is just a little flip with some paper underneath for journaling and a little pen with a little pine cone in it. This is another picture that Opal used in her book. This is a copy of a newspaper article on Opal when her diary was being published. And so you can write on the back of that. There is another little, these are all images that I copied. There is a copy of Opal's Fairyland journal online, and that is where I got the copies of the photos to print them. It is through one of the universities, I can't remember which, but I'll look that up for you. There's one of Tracy Fox's tags. This is a picture of Opal. I did a little bit of digital work in here just to make a few pages. Here we have, this is one of the freebies from Nick the Booksmith, this little tiny envelope here. Have a little owl tag, a teeny tiny tag, and a larger, this is just scraps that were left over after the project was done, and I just made it into a tag. This is a little primitive sketch that I sketched and painted, and just a little owl and some stitching. Here is another one of the pictures that Opal used in her book. This is a journaling card that is also a belly band, and it holds another little journaling card that you can write on. Here is a leaf specimen that has been sewn into some plastic, some clear plastic. Another one of the pictures that Opal would have used. Some more fabric to represent the dress. There's a lot of nature in this movie, a lot of scenes of outdoor things. This is some printed, leaf printed paper. Just a little flip. Here we've got a couple of die cuts, and this is painted with chalk paint, and I love to do that in journals. This is so smooth and it feels so good to write on. So there's that. This is from an old botany book. Here I have an envelope with a specimen slide that I made. This is a butterfly, and I put both the French and the English versions because Opal often identified things in French. So this is a butterfly. This is a spice bush swallowtail, and on the back I have the French name there. Now, can I produce it? Not produce it. Pronounce it. I need to do this video over. Y'all excuse me. That is the French for butterfly wings. So, those are both sides of the little slide. Here I've just got a little mushroom and one of Tracy Fox's labels. More chalk painting. Here are another couple of the samples that Opal used in her book. Here is another little belly band, and it's got a little towhee on it. And some handmade paper behind it. Here are some stamping that I just took some black and white inks and enhanced the stamping. And here is a little tuck, and this paper is circa 1970 something. I have a tablet of this left from like 7th grade, and it had orange paper, and so I only had a few sheets left, but I decided I wanted to put a few of them in here. So I thought that was kind of a fun look. This is part of my digi kit here too. I didn't really do a kit, so to speak, but and I used, like I said, a lot of different kinds of papers and kind of some crinkly brown paper, you know, because this is what Opal would have kind of had to write on, just different things like that. These were some leaves that I stenciled And then just, excuse me, just drew around. Here's some more stamping enhanced with ink. Some more handmade paper. This is actually Opal. She was piecing together the diary pages. This has a little tag inside the pocket here. Here is another little digital that I did in one of Tracy Fox's labels. Glued on there. Another label. Here's another little quick sketch that I did and painted of a little fox. This is some handmade paper, and this is another page from the book. It just was a title page, and so I just stuck it in there just for writing. You know, it just could be an extra writing spot. Some botanical dyed paper, some little stamping there. Here's another, a little corner tuck, and here is some of the leftover. I just glued all my leftovers and then made tags and stuff out of them. This is just a little flip pad with different papers and stuff on there sewn into that. This is actually from Opal's book, and did I even tell y'all the right book? Yeah, this is the Story of Opal. This is the one that this is one of the pages out of Opal's book. And some more stamping and inking, some eco-dye fabric. That's paper, Sandy. Some more fabrics that represent her clothing. And it's just a fabric flip. More collage and a Tim Holtz die. This was some handmade paper, some eco-dye. Here's another little card that you can journal on. More journaling space, more eco and all that. Some more painting, and this is just a little card. It's also one of the ones that Opal used in her book. More stamping and inking down here to make it sort of sketchy. This is where I started doing a kit, and then I just kind of, I didn't want to do it. So these are some of the little cards that I made that just tuck in here that you can pull out and journal on, or stick photos on, or I guess whatever you wanted to on there. And then here's a little tuck with a small little tag. This is one of Opal's sample of her handwriting. This is actually a photo of Opal's real hand. Opal had an uncanny, unnatural way with animals, and she would sit perfectly still and observe, and she would put sugar water on her fingers, and she would sit and wait, and butterflies would just land on her. So this is at a reception. I believe this was when Opal was working for a lady as a companion to a child, and she was teaching the child. I believe that's what era or period this is from. Okay, Opal also had, like I mentioned, a lot of strange pets. A crow was one of them. A toad was one of them. A wood rat. Caterpillars. She had a pig and a dog and a lamb and all kinds of things. So this is from the book that Jane Boulton wrote, and it's just a little page of some of Opal's writing, and I just made that into a tag. And the same thing with this here with her crow, and just made a big tag to kind of tuck in there. Here is this is one of my own hand carved stamps, and then I've enhanced it with some inking. And here is another little journal card. More journaling space. This is also Opal. This is a picture of her. Some botanical paper. There's a little tuck up here with a card. This is just all a collage. It's just a big collage piece. This is just a piece of paper, and it's folded to look like an envelope, but you can, you know, obviously write on it. but it's just folded to look like a little envelope. These are two of my hand carved stamps also. And like I said, I used some black and some white ink just to kind of do this. Here's another little mushroom tag. I really enjoyed making these. This was a lot of fun. Another piece of that circa 1970 paper. It's more of opal. Another stamp with that inking. Another collage. Here's some hand-painted paper, and I've transferred some of it onto here. I don't even know what I'm trying to say right now. It's late in the day. I don't need to try to film late in the day when I get tired. Some more of the botany book. Here is another specimen. This is Queen Anne's lace, or as Opal would call it, a flower. And it is double-sided. And there's another little mushroom sample. Some more painting on here with the chalk paint. A little flip where you can write, and with a tuck, and you can also write behind that. It's got the little bird in it. Here's another little quick sketch I did and painted, and it's just a little deer. This is some cigar paper that I just folded that you could write on. This is paper that you actually, I wish I had some more, I'm almost out. I found a pad of it in a flea market, but it's actually what you roll cigars in. So I guess I could go to a tobacco store. I don't know about that. Anyway, here is another image that Opal used in her book, and another, and it's just a little card. It's so hard to put things in there upside down. Here's another one. This one has one of the little Nick the Booksmith and a Tracy Fox tag, and a little Nick the Booksmith envelope. Now, how did I get that in there if it won't go back? Oh, there it goes. And then this has a couple of different pockets. Here's a little mushroom card and a little bird card. And I'll share with you where I got these. I'll share the book in the links below. It's a Reader's Digest book, but it's one of my favorites to use for nature. It has so many good things in it. More just little doodling. Here is another fabric flip where you can journal, and that is the end of the book. And this is actually part of Opal's journey. It says, "Under the steps lives a toad. I call him Virgil." And so that is the first book. And I'm going to stop the video on this one now, and then I will continue it, a second video for the second book. So I want to thank you for joining me. I hope you will dive into a little research about Opal yourself, and that you'll enjoy learning about her, and that you will delight in her whimsical writing like I do. So thank you for joining me, and I will see you around the studio.